everyone, it's Anthony Ramos. Okay, I have a treat for you today. The Emmys are upon us, which will be September 20th, and What We Do in the Shadows has been nominated for Outstanding Comedy Series, and I'm so excited today to be talking to one of the show's stars and a good friend of mine, and GLAAD, Harvey Guillen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, first off, I have to know, when the Emmy nominations came out, I know there was a lot of buzz with your show, and then it happened, the nomination for Outstanding Comedy Series and others, I think 5 other nominations, right?
8 nominations.
Oh my goodness, 8 nominations. But I think for Outstanding Comedy Series, what was your reaction? Because that's a huge moment.
Yeah, so there was some buzz that it could happen potentially, but you don't want to get your hopes up. And, in a year that there was over 500 shows on the air to vote for, and we're in the, 8 that were selected is already a win. Like that by itself. So I know it's cliche to say to be nominated is an honor, but it really kind of is. It's like 8 shows were selected out of 500 that were on the air, and we were one of them. So for me, the day that it happened, I was in bed and I got a text from my friend Johnny. He said, "Hey, are you watching?" I was like, "Oh, that's right, they're today." And I jumped out of bed and I opened my laptop and Leslie was announcing them. And I think they usually end with last year's winner, which was Marvelous Miss Maisel. And so when they got to Miss Maisel again for the nomination, I didn't count. So I was like, "Oh, I guess that's it. We didn't." "Oh, and What We Do in the Shadows." And she like kind of threw it in there at the last minute. And I was like, "What?" And I was like literally recording, and I have myself recorded forever, realizing when we got nominated.
Yeah, because it's like, is it alphabetical? Because W would make you guys toward the end.
Right. But, yeah. And so when I don't know why in my head I thought Maisel last year, like I was like, oh, and it's also, like later in the alphabet, and I was like, oh, that's it. And I didn't count, and there's 8, and that was like the 7th one, and I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, and then so it was really nice to kind of drop your guard and then really kind of feel it.
It's funny because there's certain shows like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel that you brought up, straight out the gate, they get Emmy nominated. For you guys, you're in season 2, and I feel like from season 1 to season 2, there's just been this huge momentum for your show. And it's like similar, you mean like Schitt's Creek, for example, which is also nominated in your category. They didn't kind of get that like Emmy momentum for like seasons. So why, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think it was about season 2 that really just kind of changed it all for you guys? Because everyone is talking about What We Do in the Shadows.
I just think that it took a year for people to, get word of mouth. In season 2, we also explored Guillermo's, trajectory of Van Helsing. And so people were really kind of loving that storyline and the idea that you don't see a traditional stunt superhero in front of you, kick butt. And like, so that being me, like, I don't want to say that it's because of Guillermo, but it feels in part, Well, it's just great to play something that traditionally you wouldn't be allowed to play because of Hollywood standards and whatnot. And also the cast, the characters just living their everyday lives, like they're vampires, but all the vampires are queer. And no one really even talked about that until like season 2. And I was like, they're just living their lives. Like they're all the characters are queer. And people are like, oh, that's right. And I was like, that's right. They're just living their lives. Let them live, and it's like, this is who they love and they do what they want. And so I think people really love that storyline as well. But I really think that it's word of mouth that people just were telling their friends. And also, we also partnered with Hulu this year. So you can watch it on Hulu. So if you don't have FX, because it is a cable network, you can watch it on Hulu. So I think that really brought in like a second, wind of people.
I mean, queer vampires, who doesn't like that? Nandor and Guillermo, my mind is always going crazy for the 2 of them of what will happen. That's funny, it's like, what a time, because I think the last time I talked to you, the pandemic had like kind of just started, and now season 2 on such a high, Emmy nominations, and then we know that season 3 is definitely happening, but we don't know when yet, right? Because you guys are not back in production yet, or are you?
We're not. So we wrapped season 2 right at Christmas, like on Christmas Eve, basically. Like we wrapped and went home, and then everything happened in the new year. So we got everything in the can before this pandemic happened. But we are working, right now to see when it's safe and when everyone is comfortable in going back to work and to film season 3. But so far, so good. People around the world are discovering it as well. They just, aired it in Spain and also in all over the UK, and we get messages from all over the world, and I was like, wait, where is it showing? And it's like, it was showing in HBO in Spain, and it's like, whoa, okay, cool. Like, so it's kind of nice to have new fans from around the world who have just discovered it. So they just started with episode 1 of season 1, so they have 2 seasons they can binge back to back. So it's a nice little present if you discovered it late.
The magic of streaming. I think with the Emmys, we did thankfully see some more Black actors be nominated. Unfortunately, when it comes to Latinx actors like yourself, I definitely feel like there were some people that got overlooked. Obviously, you would have loved to have been nominated, and so many of us thought that you should have been. But just overall, I feel like, what is it? Why are we still not there when it comes time when in terms of Latinx representation in these major acting category nominations?
I think we have a long way to go, and we are slowly but surely moving in that direction. We can't ignore the great progress that we did. I think it was over a raise of 23% of nominations for people of color this year, which is great. And that including African Americans. So we can't not give credit to that. That did happen, and so like I always think it's a feather on one of our hats is a feather on all our hats. So people of color. So when I see someone who gets nominated, even if they're not Latinx or if they're Afro-Latinx, they're still part of the community. It's like they're Latinx, or African American, still person of color. So when someone gets nominated, it's like, that's inclusion for us all, So I would love to be nominated, and that would be great. But I feel confident in the fact that if I do the work and it's good work, it'd be so good that they can't ignore you. And whether a nomination comes along with it or doesn't, that you put your best foot forward and you put your best work and you do it for the fans. And so the fans see the work that you're doing, then that's really what counts there, So, but don't get me wrong, a nomination would have been great, would have loved it. But we also had great victories last year, like Billy Porter, who made history. It would have been great to make history as well, because if I would have gotten the nomination, it would have been the first, queer Latinx in my category in history. So that's something to aspire for. If anything, it's something to put on my goal board and focus on it. And so it's something to aspire to. So I don't see it as a defeat. I just see it as one step closer to getting to that historic moment.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it. And here I'm just going to put it out there because, the Emmys this year, unfortunately, are, they're not what they normally are. People can't be there in person. So here's what I think is going to happen. This year, the show gets nominated. 2021 Emmys, you will get nominated, and it'll all be back in person, and you'll get to go on stage and do the red carpet. Let's hope for that, right? You don't want to you don't want to have your big moment the year when no one can, when it's
You're absolutely right. And you're going to put that out there, and we're going to manifest it in the universe, and it's going to happen, because if I want to be nominated for an Emmy, I want to go to the actual event. I want to go to the Emmy carpet. I want to
champagne, all of that.
I'm going to do it up.
And it's true, because I think, and even like going back to Schitt's Creek, like Dan Levy just got nominated for the first time in the, and it's the last season. So, I think it's definitely in the cards. What would it mean for you this year if the show were to win Outstanding Comedy Series?
Wow. If we won this year, I'm still in shock for the nomination. So like if I didn't know I had to be bedridden for like a week or something. But the idea that the show is so loved and so many of the members of the Academy voted for it, because it's thousands and thousands of people have to vote. That would mean so much. That means you're actually looking at the show and the work that we put into it. One thing that people look at the show and it's such a fun, light, great show, and they're like, oh, we make it look easy, basically, and it's actually so hard to make comedy look easy. It's actually a craft and it's an art. And so for people to really realize that, it's like, oh, they did the producers, the writers, the directors, the actors have to all gel well and perfectly to make you believe that it's like perfection, like as they say, chef's kiss. So if that were to happen, that just meant that, they saw all the work that and love that we put into every season that we do.
Yeah, and what I love so much about it, because you talked about how, really it is a queer, all the characters are queer, the vampires, and we don't see enough of that queer storylines and representation in that kind of specific genre. It's not something that there's been some TV shows, obviously True Blood with vampires and stuff, but just overall that kind of like very specific, and obviously True Blood was not a comedy, but we don't see enough of that. So I love that people are, getting it and
Yeah.
loving it.
Yeah, and I think it's because people don't think they hone in on it and be like, oh, what we do in the shadows is a queer show, It's like these
Mhm.
characters happen to be queer, and that's how we should perceive every show and characters. We shouldn't have the token queer character who has a storyline that's taboo. And we shouldn't have the token queer next door neighbor who's a stereotype. We should have human beings who are living their everyday lives and they happen to be queer. And that's a part of who they are. And so that doesn't really drive the storyline of like, oh, we have to have all queer storylines now. It's like, no, they're human beings living their lives, loving who they love. Then stay tuned for the entertainment because it comes naturally. It's just living life.
Absolutely. And I want to talk to you a little bit because I think it's important what you said earlier is that, Guillermo and you are not the traditional like Hollywood, leading man, yet you are now, which is so great. But I'm sure earlier in your career, there were people that said, you have to look a certain way or do this and that. What does it mean for you to be, this like leading man on television that's obviously connecting with so many people?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being told, by like professors, like in school, like they're like, "What are you gonna do about? Are you gonna lose like 20 pounds?" And I was like, "Why?" It's like, because you could really be a leading guy, and you're really handsome. You just lost a cut, and I was like, these conversations where other people were telling me what I should correct about myself, for them to feel comfortable, like letting me go into the real world of like the professional like acting world. And then I realized a long time ago, it's like I don't give a fuck what you think. I'm gonna do what I want to do. And if you're either gonna, it's everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone loves tea. And if you do like this kind of tea that I'm serving, like piping hot, then you're gonna drink it. And if you don't, that's okay because the cart's gonna move to the next table and they're gonna either drink it or they're not. So you're either drinking this tea or you ain't. So that's just the motto.
I love that. You're such a good storyteller. I was picturing that cart of tea. um, no,
Serving
it's
pipe.
so important because, even for myself, like years went by before I saw anyone that looked like me, and like, being of, Filipino and, background. And I know that people are going to see your character that are Latinx, that are LGBTQ, and just feel seen and represented. So it's just so important.
It is great, and you're absolutely right. It took a long time to see anyone who looked like us on TV. Like I didn't see anyone growing up, and if I did, they were the punchline. They were the person that were being bullied or mocked or whatnot. They were never the leading superhero. They were never the leading handsome, desirable, person that was in the storyline. Those were never the categories. And so again, another thing to note is that we're slowly but surely changing the way people are being seen on television because this is life. This is real life. You and I are real life, and we need to represent that in front of the screen. And that's what we're doing, slowly but surely.
I love that. I was just thinking, I know that the team and the crew you have such a good bond with them, and they're very at what we do in the shadows. And they seem to be like very collaborative with you if you have ideas. So thinking about season 3, do you have any sort of like hopes and dreams of what could or might happen? Maybe you heard something, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like that ongoing thing. It's like, what's going to happen in season 3? I know that season 3's been written already. They won't tell me anything. I got to tell you, and I'm totally being honest, and like, this is the tea. Like, they won't tell me anything until I show up to set and we do a table read. I found out Guillermo was a descendant of Van Helsing at the table read of the last episode of season 1. Like, they didn't tell me ahead of time, which keeps me on my, toes because the show is filmed like a documentary. It's a mockumentary. And so it has to feel organic. So whenever you look at Guillermo's face and he has a look of terror, it's probably most like 80% Harvey not knowing what's happening in the scene because I just found out 5 minutes before. And so my face is like, what's happening? And it's like, there's danger and whatnot. And with the whole, again, trajectory of season 2 and like kicking ass and all of that, they didn't tell me until I showed up. I showed up to the first table read of season 2, and I was reading the script. They're like, Guillermo kills a vampire. What? Guillermo kills another one in the bathroom, in the garden. And I was like, what's happening? They're like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get a personal trainer. You're going to hit the gym 4 times a week. You're going to work on that stunt stuff. And I was like, oh, and I was down for it. I was like, I'm going to do it. And I'm glad to report I did 99% of my stunts. Like I only did like one that was too dangerous. I jumped out of a window, like a 2nd-story window. And I was just like, who am I? Because I would literally, when I'm in Guillermo mode, I'm like, yes. And then I look back at the playback, I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that?
The superhero workout. I love that. Well, maybe there's going to be more of that for season 3,
No, there definitely will be that. I was told that. So I've been I've been like Fergie and working on my fitness for the last couple of weeks at home, just because you got to build that stamina. You know, you
Oh,
do a
totally.
take like 5 times. There was one take I did for season 2 where I ran upstairs like 62 times. That's like 62 floors. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like, it's like, so if you don't get that stamina and, she's a big girl. So it's like, I got to make it like through the day. So I was just like, I got to get that stamina going. So it's hitting that gym every day, slowly but surely, just so you can get that extra mile.
Get it. No, totally. Before I let you go, I want to talk about, because we are definitely in this moment at an election year, fresh off the heels of the DNC, obviously the RNC as well. I think at the Emmys, the voting topic is going to be front and center. How could it not be? And I think what we should talk about is, I still feel like there is not enough Latinx people out there who think that their vote matters. And obviously we need, especially as LGBTQ people, need to show up and make our voices heard. So, why, in your opinion, must we, A, register to vote if you're not, and then B, show up in November and vote?
We always, it's so funny to me when people say that. They're like, well, it's just one vote. I didn't vote because I don't care for politics, or I don't care for it. It's like, you have to care. It's your livelihood. It's your life. It's your friend's life. If you don't care, I always think if you don't care enough about yourself, then care about someone else, because it affects everyone. And so if you don't care about yourself, and that's a personal issue that you have with yourself, then do it for your grandma. Do it for your next door neighbor who's queer. Do it for the guy down the street who came to this country for a better life. Do it for someone else. If you're not doing it for yourself, then do it for someone else, because then at the end of the day, if you don't do it at all, then you're just being selfish and you're not contributing to society. And nobody wants to be known as a selfish bitch.
No, we don't need that. Well, Harvey, it's been a pleasure. Congratulations again. Again, everyone, What We Do in the Shadows, many, many Emmy nominations, including one of the big ones, Outstanding Comedy Series. And we will find out on September 20th who takes home the prize. But Harvey, you're one of our favorites. Thank you so much. And we'll
Thank
talk really soon.
you. Talk soon.